Welcome to the Tiger Interview Series.
In this episode, we are interviewing Charles Galiano of C25. I also have Trent Limecooler, who is with me as acting as a liaison between me and Charles. So we are going to give you a masterclass in catching. We're going to talk about framing, we're going to talk about blocking, we're going to talk about throwing, and we're also going to be talking about the new age things and the new age teaching styles that are happening inside the catching position.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Tiger Interview Series. Today we have a special guest, Charles Galiano of C25, and also we have our very own Trent Limecooler in the house. He's going to be our liaison for this conversation because I was not a catcher. I was a middle infielder and outfielder, and they tried to put me back behind the dish, and it just was god-awful. I was taking baseballs right off the chest and face. So, but first, Charles, thanks for coming on to the Tiger Interview Series. I know when people reach out for podcasts, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know what to really expect. But I want to talk about catching development. I think it's one of those things that you don't hear in an interview type of setting or conversation type of setting. It seems like it's always in the back door, like people are talking about it in the clubhouse or just off to the side. It's never out in the open. So I think this is going to be a very unique conversation, and I'm really excited for it. So before we start, can you give us a background on who you are and also go a little bit of a deep dive into C25?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I grew up Long Island, New York. I went on to play at Fordham University in the Bronx, a small D1. And my junior year, I had actually got drafted out of high school to the Philadelphia Phillies. I declined, then I went to Fordham. I got redrafted my junior year. Played with Milwaukee for about 2.5 years. Had a really, good experience there. Just got hurt. I took my labrum surgery. It was just kind of a rough go in the minor leagues, but fought through as much as I can, but made some really, really great connections when I was there. But came home, started 7-Tool Catching, which is my training development company where I have clients from, 8 years old all the way up to pro guys that I train day in, day out, specializing in catching, running large programs. So that's pretty much a day-to-day. And then, diving into C25. C25 was actually a COVID idea. So that was something that had started probably, I'd say, about 2 weeks before the shutdown happened. So it gave me a really unique opportunity to kind of have extra time to work on it and, develop the company and get, everything done as far as logistics, import, exports, getting the product in, everything like that. So it was a really great opportunity that, I saw to kind of try and keep my time spent wisely because I couldn't train people in person. And I had just found that virtual training was not something people really liked. They really kind of like dealing with people. So it kind of strayed away and really let me focus on, building C25, trademarking it, writing out the whole philosophy, everything as far as that, just building the whole entire company. So, yeah, that's kind of where we're at now. I mean, it's been really, really great since inception. We just had our 8th major league team order yesterday. So it's definitely been a pretty good reaction from, the catching community and seeing guys use the product in really cool different ways. So it's just been a great, thing. The ABCA naming us, best of the show, that was really cool not too long ago. So it's been a great reaction as far as you guys, all the catching coaches out there and coordinators that, have given positive feedback on the product.
What I always find interesting from an entrepreneurial perspective is that it seems like it's always you're itching, you're scratching an itch that you've had as either an instructor or as a coach or even as a player. Is C25 one of those itches that you had to scratch and you just ended up saying, hey, I got to figure out something because my guys are not getting the concept. I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, so I mean, I see it kind of later in the podcast here, but I'll hit it now. Like as far as itching, my personal scratch, I believe in live training. I believe in replicating, high game speed. I believe in that type of things, but also not hurting guys, in the process. So that's a little bit of a challenge. That's where machine training kind of comes in, right? Like how does a catching coach mimic a 95-mile-an-hour fastball? You only got one way. It's a pitching machine. There's no catching coach is throwing 95 miles an hour, pitch after pitch, like a machine would. So that's your resort, right? So when you see that, it kind of gets these ideas going and say, okay, how do I push these guys and reinforce all these different concepts, without just dry work stuff that is just, some of it's eyewash, some of it's great fundamental stuff, but there's definitely things out there where, just as far as I'm concerned, I could take a guy with, tennis balls and this and that, and try and reinforce all these different concepts, but then you slap them back there with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, and
it doesn't really work out.
Ball did anymore. It's just irrelevant. So it's a sink or swim kind of thing, right? So that's where the underload kind of was a really good idea with the 3 and 4 ounce balls to the machine to kind of keep these guys from getting hurt, in any sort of way. Like, they have a tremendous impact on the younger age groups as far as like training them at high velocity, acclimating them to machine training without hurting them. I actually had thought of this idea initially because of when I was in Brewers camp. I remember we had to block 87-mile-an-hour sliders, literally, like it was just a ridiculous lefty slider, like out of hack attack, and it hurt. And we had to have, guards and a pillow underneath our chest protector and all these things. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. This doesn't make sense to me. There's got to be a better way, so again, this is where, the underload kind of came in, where you're now blocking 3 and 4 ounce baseballs out of the machine, and all of a sudden it doesn't hurt so bad anymore. So yeah, it's just kind of, it's just witnessing different things through training, and also as a player that kind of made me, scratch my itch, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I kind of put the cart before the horse. Can you explain what your product is? Cause I think people are like listening right now and they're like, this guy sounds great, but what the hell's the product?
So right now previously weighted baseballs obviously existed. They're found, and made of PVC, split leather, all different kinds of plastics. But I had found out that, there's no full grain leather weighted baseball. So these are the first weighted baseballs that are made of real full grain leather that can be used through a pitching machine. Right, so split leather is probably the closest thing that you're going to get to a normal baseball. But if you use split leather through a pitching machine, it wears down to almost cardboard. It's very unsafe. It starts to break apart, which is not good for the machine, not good for the safety of the catcher. So these, when I had these baseballs made, I had them made, and I had 2 requests of real full grain leather, where it's a very thick type of leather that's durable, and low seams as well. So a low seam baseball where they go through the machine easy. High seams, they kind of pick a side on the wheels of the machine, and they're not as accurate. So those are my 2, requests as far as when I had these balls manufactured. But yeah, it's just kind of a revolutionary idea. It's really an idea tandem with the product, right? Like our philosophy, a training philosophy tandem with the product. So you have a 3 ounce and a 4 ounce, which is the underload baseballs. And then you have the 6, 7, and 8 ounce baseballs, which is the overload. The underload has, multiple uses as far as, soft hands, transfer work, pocket awareness. I mean, you're going to drop these balls like crazy if you're, if you don't have perfect pocket awareness. If it hitting, the tough part of your hand, you're going to drop. You have to be pretty perfect as far as, where you're catching it in your glove with the underload. And again, like we were discussing before, kind of training at, high speeds with a low risk of injury. That is pretty much the cream of the crop as far as, a use for the underload that guys really like. I mean, I get videos. I don't say it's okay to do as the owner. I don't sign off on it, but I get video of guys 110 miles an hour on a hack attack, and these guys are just getting blown up, but they're laughing about it. They're having fun. Mm-hmm. They're not getting hurt.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to see, that type of stuff happen. Because, again, all of a sudden you drop a guy from 110, let's say he didn't catch it, he got blown up, or he caught 1 or 2, and then you drop him to 95. The 95 seems like a snail now. But how do you push the guy's eyes and reaction time and things like that without hurting him, right? So that's where the 3 ounce is really good. You can brainwash these catchers, like especially the younger levels. Like I had a 10, 12-year-old kid. I just started acclimating him off the machine. All of a sudden, I had him for about a year I'd say a year ago, with C25. And now I had him catching with the 3 ounce, probably it was about 78, 79 miles an hour out of the machine. It was pretty hard for, a 10, 11 age. Yeah. Very, very hard. Yeah. And this kid was just bang with the 3 ounce. No problem. After about a year of training, though, very athletic kid. I had a good body to work with. But all of a sudden, you got the 3 ounce, and then you sneak in the 4 ounce. and then he's catching the 4-ounce no problem. And then you sneak in the 5s, and then you just brainwash this kid to catch a velocity that he has no business catching. So that is what the product is for the underload. And then the overload, which is the 6, 7, and 8-ounce baseballs, those have really great uses as far as transfer work and minimizing blowback. So the term everybody knows is, hey, Johnny, stick it, like be strong, keeping strikes. So that's the real, primary use for the overload is just strong hands and keeping strikes. A pitcher's biggest pet peeve is a guy who can't, keep balls in the zone and drags pitches out. So the overload is great as far as that, and transfer work as well. The feeling of just keeping the ball moving, 2-piece transfers where guys kind of hits their glove and then they yank the ball back. That's a 2-piece transfer. It's not fluent. Overload, it takes more energy to stop the ball than to just keep the ball moving. The overload should never be hitting your glove too hard, during transfer work.
I find that interesting because you gave me a really good segue into the development side of catchers. How do you see the current state of catching development from when you started in college to your professional career, making it to the show, and then obviously you are now an entrepreneur? How do you see the current state of catching?
Current state of catching, throwing, blocking, pretty much the same. Blocking a little different now with the 1-knee stuff coming out. Receiving, whole nother world. I mean, I left in 2017, and to 2021 right now, it is a world of difference. I mean, every year I always fly in my catching coordinator to come and train myself along with my other trainers with 7-tool catching, and update us on kind of what's going on in the big league. So I make sure my company is dishing out professional information. Otherwise, I can't market myself as a professional catching company. But he comes in and there's just insane data on this new method of receiving, of working back towards the zone. I didn't like it all that much, but the data really is backing it up.
Explain the back into the zone. Explain that concept.
So just kind of, let's say it's on the outside corner, like picture right. Who are we trying to fool? The umpire. The umpire is behind us. Let's track the umpire's eyes. What is the umpire doing throughout the pitch? He's looking at the pitcher. He tracks the pitch out of the hand, and he tracks it down to the catcher's glove. Now, he's not looking down when everything else previously is going on. He's looking at the pitcher. So what this method of receiving is basically giving the perception that you're catching everything on your way back to the zone. So when that umpire's eyes is tracking the ball down into the zone, all he sees is a catcher working back towards the zone. So all of a sudden it's giving this perception that everything is closer towards home plate, and you're taking these borderline pitches and you're taking them with swipes that the umpire doesn't know, in the blink of an eye, doesn't know if you caught it here, or here. It's just swipe towards the middle. So it's an unbelievable method to take advantage of human error. They found a way now that with these heat maps and the way it's statistically backing everything up, the guys that are getting paid are the guys moving the ball. Those are typically to what extent is, every guy's different. Some guys have these big kind of relaxes off the plate and have these big, tremendous movements. And some guys are edges very subtle. A lot of guys that are just very subtle with these small movements, given the perception that they're working back towards the zone. So that's kind of where that has been a world difference since I stopped catching.
Where do you think the community is getting right now from a teaching perspective? What gets you very excited that, hey, this hasn't been taught in a really long time, and we're actually really exploring this concept, and we're expanding on it, and I'm starting to see catchers get a little bit better in this area. What would you say that area is?
I gotta be honest. I keep my pulse on Twitter. I always take a look. I don't post all that much with C25, but I listen and I see what everybody else is posting about. And the community really does a really good job of just pointing out a lot of different things. There's not one thing I could really say, hey, we're doing this as a whole, but I do think they're doing a lot of things right in just questioning different parts. And I got to say, the Twitter community is very interesting. They go at it a lot. I kind of sit on the sidelines back and watch, but I do like that there's a lot of discussion and challenging each other with different aspects. There's not one thing I would say they're doing really, really well. I could say there's things, which I'm going to show you next question, is what they're not doing well, which in my opinion would be I think there's too much short work going on. I watch stuff where I'm working for, with a guy for 60 minutes or 30 minutes and charging $50-$60, and you're sitting there for 15 minutes doing some dry little thing. Like it's not time well spent. I mean, there's fundamental stuff that of course you need to hit, especially at the younger ages, but you got a 16, 17-year-old guy that likes to fire it up and get going. Don't take 15 minutes of a half-hour lesson and sitting there doing some little, eyewash thing. I think, for me, training is expensive per minute. Hop in, man, you throw them in the fire and sink or swim. And that's where the C25 stuff is really good, because you could do that without hurting guys.
You going super practical with them and going, let's get into the actual action rather than let's work on
game-like.
Yeah. So you try to go more game-like than anything else.
My 7-tool programs, the way I run them, typically is sink or swim. You go in, the machines are firing up from day one, and they get beat up day 1, day 2, week 3, week 4. All of a sudden, week 5, they sunk or swim. They figured it out. To me, that's just my personal training philosophy. I think it's just time better well spent. They figure it out, and they're tougher by the time it's all said and done. But again, you have to make sure you don't hurt them. There's a fine line there, pushing guys and too far and deterring them from the position. You never want to do that. Because that's especially something that happens at the younger ages when kids get hurt or, they get, blocking for the first time and whatever the case is. And it deters them, which is, that you don't want. But one other thing I also do think that we're not doing enough as catching guys is practicing the in-game stuff, right? Like we always hitting the big 3 inside, receiving, blocking, throwing. I don't think we're hitting 1, 2, 3 double plays. I don't think we're hitting pitch outs. I don't think we're hitting, pass ball recoveries. I don't think we're hitting, bunt. I don't think we're hitting all these things that happen out on the field where you don't want to look, stupid when you go out to tryouts, right? Like I see a lot of the big 3 constantly being hit, which is good, and you need to. But I do think there needs to be a little more time, and especially I think I'm guilty of it as well, spending a little more time on the in-game stuff, the specialty stuff.
It's almost easy to do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're also confined to a cube in the winter.
Correct.
But again, I guess the creativity has to come out. Like, how can I actually duplicate the bunt? How can I duplicate the recovery?
It's that, and then I think it's also you trust in the coaches that those kids are on. They should be teaching that as well.
Well, also, I mean, catching is such a niche subject that it's hard to have every single youth coach to be able to be at least well-versed in catching. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm trying to think back to my youth days. I don't think we had an actual catching coach. They just tried to do their best.
You got to think also in college, there's not many college catching coaches either.
That's another very good point. Like, did you learn more in college about catching or professional baseball and catching?
I was lucky. I had a very good college coach that was a catcher himself, Kevin Layton over at Fordham University, and my catching coordinator with the Brewers, Charlie Green. He was incredible. I mean, every time the guy came into town in spring training, I just felt like I got better that day. His way of teaching guys, he pushes you, and you're not nothing until you do something, until you show him something. He was tough in that sense, but I learned a lot from him. But previously, before college, I have to be honest, the only people I really learned from was my teammates. I had a half hour one time with this guy, Angel Salome. I remember when I was 16, I was a pro guy at the time, and I never had a catching. There wasn't even really a catching guy when I was growing up. There was programs here and there, whatever, but like you were saying, there's very few far and in between that you find those catching guys that really make an impact on you and are good.
Well, if there's a coach out there right now that's listening and he wants to or she wants to develop catchers, they don't have a development background, what would you say is like a typical timeline for a catcher? Like starting at this kid wants to start catching ground floor to he's going to be adequate behind the plate. Like what's your development timeline on that? Like what are your focus points?
Development timeline. Well, you gotta pour the concrete first, right? Like you have to have the foundation. That's where the setups come in. To me, if you want to get a kid going and starting catching, your first thing is setups and making sure the kid trusts his gear and is fearless. If the guy is afraid to get hurt, it probably is not the position for him. Maybe he has to get hit a couple times and learn, how to trust his gear, that when that ball gets fouled back in his mask and around his mask, it doesn't hurt. When he blocks the ball the correct way, it doesn't hurt, right? So, but all these things, but when you catch it off your arm a little bit and there's a bruise, and the kid wants to run away from the position, that's a problem, right? So that's number one, is pouring the foundation and getting him fearless behind the plate. Those are the points, in my opinion, for a brand new catcher.
I'm getting flashbacks of Mighty Ducks Goldenberg with Emilio Estevez, where he ties him to the goalposts, and they're just slap shotting at him.
What are you doing, coach? What are you doing? They're actually bringing that back.
I know. Disney's bringing back the TV show. You bet I'm watching that. Yeah. Definitely being a 90s.
Goldberg back.
I'm gonna relive my 90s kids days. All right.
Absolutely.
Anyways, all right. So number one, build the foundation, make them fearless. What's number two?
Foundation, fearless. Two, then you go in your priorities, right? Receiving is your number one priority. Blocking is your number two priority. Throwing is your number three priority. So you got to start, in my opinion, at receiving. It's something he's going to do 100 plus times a game. Then you got your blocking. You'll do, 15, 20 or less, whatever that game. And then throwing, 5. So to me, that's how I dish out, kind of the priorities. So focusing on receiving and just catching the ball. Like what's the name of the position? Catcher, right? Like, don't start a guy off and start with this new, method of receiving. That's not for a new guy. Let's just catch the ball first. Let's be a catcher is what the name of the position is. And then blocking and things like that. But blocking, to me, and I tell every guy, you want to be a good blocker, a good, receiver, a good thrower, you have to put yourself in a good position to do so. So if you have inefficient setups, you're going to be an inefficient blocker, receiver, and thrower. It's just the way it is. You have to figure out your setups before you do anything else. And it takes some time to tinker and fail and be late for a block and get thumbed and all these things to figure out your optimal setups. But listen, I throughout my whole career, my last year Pro Bowl, I was constantly adjusting my setups year to year. It was everlasting changing as my flexibility changed, my body changed. I grew, whatever the case was. It's a never ending, thing to find the most optimal stances for you. But one thing I always found was just the lower you are, the easier catching is. The low man always wins, so flexibility is a tremendous, tremendous asset for
it. Like when you build a catcher, like when they get older, is that like the number one thing is flexibility, or is it building up the strength to actually hold yourself for 7 innings?
I'll take the flexibility over strength.
Really?
Same.
Yeah, I'll definitely take the flexibility over strength for sure, because they're gonna be in better positions to do things. And like if you have a guy that's bulky, and can't move, he's gonna have a very hard time getting to things. Like you're in a position where you're basically on the ground trying to steal these strikes off, from ankles at 95 plus, right? So like it's a very hard thing to do if you're this big bulky guy sitting, up high and things like that. The new style receiving is actually more conducive to a larger catcher. For the lower, more flexible catchers, it's needed, but not as needed. But the bigger guys I work with, I always, I try, especially if they're older, get them working with the new style receiving. For some reason, I found that correlation where the bigger guys that are not as flexible are much more efficient than newer style.
Do you recommend like catchers doing yoga? So like if you get a guy that's inflexible, like you need to go to a yoga instructor right away.
Absolutely.
You need to hang out with the moms for a while and get some yoga.
Well, we had yoga classes in college.
It has that connotation, but it really is so neat. It made me a different baseball player, man.
You see a lot of pitchers doing it now too.
Yeah.
I think the flexibility part of it, you're going to get more flexibility, but you're going to get more strength. Think of the strength that being in that position for such a long period of time,
like your
throughout
stability,
the game.
like your stability is in the air.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Being in those different yoga poses, you got to stay in that position so long. You're actually building more strength.
So would it make better sense to do yoga than doing like stability ball, like those crazy ass stability ball drills?
Medium. Pilates is a lot of stability.
Yeah.
Along with
flexibility. Yeah, you see a lot of guys doing Pilates now more than yoga.
Really?
It's kind of a combination of both.
So like you actually recommend doing both, like if you have the budget.
Neither are gonna hurt you. I can tell you right now, like I hit a point in my career where I was like, I lifted. I was as strong as I was gonna be. I was big. I was, flexible. I was this. I was that. Oh, not flexible. No, sorry. And then I said, okay, what's going to take you to my next level of play? And I kind of noticed for me, my knees would hurt here and there, and my shoulder, I would have the day where I had a cannon, I was on the money, and then that was one out of, every 5 days maybe, where it was like that A+ arm. Everything else was A-, B+, B, it would be bouncing around that area. And then all of a sudden I started doing upper body yoga, lower body yoga, doing these things. And that 1 out of 5 days, when honestly, I'm not exaggerating, this is just how it was for me, went to 4 out of 5. My arm just changed. Like I was on the bag with the A+ strength every time when I was lifting in conjunction with the yoga routine. I got to the point where I had anxiety. I had performance anxiety if I didn't do this. If I didn't do my yoga routine twice a day, I couldn't play. It would just freak me out. That's how much of an impact it personally had on my game. I mean, every guy's different, but that's just how it was for me.
Well, I would like to say, because like if you look at a guy like Yachty, looking at his career as he came up, he was one of those bigger guys, like kind of a little bit, I'd say, on the heavier side when he came up. But look at probably 5 years into his career, he changed his whole workout routine and his body to know that he wants to stay at that position longer. So you got to think also with being able to be flexible, be a little bit more, let's say, stable in that way. You really are actually staying healthy for a longer period of time. Then you look at a guy like Joe Mauer that had to leave the position and go play first base after, let's say, 7-8 years. And then the same with like Posey. He got hurt all those times. Now he's playing a little bit more first base than catching. He's catching every now and then, but it
seems like the longevity has actually changed.
It has. But I think nowadays with the position change of the stance, a lot of guys going to a knee, that's really saving a lot of guys and helping them out to actually expand their career and be in that position longer and catching more games. And
that's a really good point. So like, I want both your takes. Obviously, I think you're bullish on the knee, right? Like you like the knee?
I like it, and then I don't like it. So like I like it for, let's say, a high school kid that wants to try it out. Let's say no one on base. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
But you got to think, those guys in the major leagues,
it's a different animal.
Well, they're major league pitchers. They're gonna hit their spots.
Yeah.
Then if you have a high school pitcher, yes, wow. And then you get a high school pitcher that you don't know if he's gonna throw that ball at your glove or to the backstop.
Yeah.
I don't really trust it, but I tell a lot of my guys, I go to a knee. If you feel comfortable with that pitcher doing it, do it. But if you don't, go to where you feel comfortable. That 2 feet stance or that one knee. Like, it's your judgment. I'm not telling you to do that or go to one knee or go to two. It's a judgment call. It's how you feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable, let's say, going to one knee for a certain amount of innings, that's fine. But then you don't want to get to the point where you're only going down to one knee on certain pitches and then tipping your pitches and then the other team notices that. So there's a couple different ways of going about it, but
Charles, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, like building on what he said, you definitely can't tip your pitches. I mean, there's guys that go in their primary, they go one knee down on a fastball, unless they go in their secondary for a curveball. It's very easy to see, and guys are tipping their pitches. That's a tremendous mistake that I see a lot of times at the younger levels. But as far as the one knee, I like it as far as nobody's on and less than 2 strikes, like just a straight primary situation. There's a couple, like I said, low man wins, in my opinion, when it comes to catching. There's a couple of times where I would maybe stray away. And it's if you're having, like, if the guy is becoming very wild and you can't really keep the guy in a rhythm because you're constantly having to run to the backstop because you're not blocking these balls, then that's an issue, right? The younger levels, if, like we're saying, they're not big league pitchers. So if they're missing by feet left and right, bottom and top, like, it's kind of hard to sit there on the one knee and be mobile enough to take it where you're not taking a trip to the backstop every time. So at the younger levels, I think the one knee stuff is fine, like I said, for primary stuff, but it's to the point where you're chasing balls and you can't keep the game in a rhythm. You got to get in your secondary and start trying to keep the game in a rhythm, because it's not the big leagues where you go, okay, give me the ball, I'll flip it back. You got to run to the backstop. You got to take time, get it, throw it back, go down, reset. Right, it takes time to keep this guy in a rhythm.
You lose the whole flow of the game when that happens.
Flow of the game, and he's going to throw more to the backstop because the flow is.
And it's not about the pitcher; it's about the defenders too. Like When I was playing middle infield and then that ball went to the background, I'm like, bro, are we serious right now? Like if it was like the 5th time.
Hey, I was in a game where we had 20 walks in a game, so that was no fun.
Brutal.
Yeah, no.
So you don't think this you don't think this one knee thing is a fad? You know how back, I would say it was 2010 when they had the straight leg going down. Do you remember that fad?
There's been a couple different things with setups that guys are doing, kicking out the legs is another thing, but it's been around for years. The one neat thing is here to stay. I think the working back towards the zone is here to stay. I think the secondary one knee down, when you should be in your secondary, so there's men on base or there's 2 strikes and the guys in their secondary, in their primary one knee stances, I think that's going to go. You're seeing that going on in the big leagues right now. I think that's a test. I think it's a fad. I think after time, pass balls are going to start to add up, and it's going to outweigh the benefit of trying to steal the strike with 2 strikes. So I think when guys are supposed to be in their secondary stances, they're going to end up being in their secondary stances. I think that's a fad. But let me ask you a question, right? So we talk about the one knee down, and this is just an interesting podcast question. And I had this kid come up to me, and I every year when we do setups, I make a spiel how it's an art. It's, you're dealing with your body, your flexibility, your abilities, everything. This is what works best for you to give the best chance of making this a strike. And the kid came up to me and he says, "What about this primary?" And he went down on 2 knees. And I sat there and I looked at him and I said, he said, "Can I do this?" And I was like, what's the difference? What's the difference between one knee down? Honestly, what's the difference? Somebody's going to say you look like an idiot. But what's the difference? There is no difference, right? So it's just an interesting thing. Like, again, the low man wins. That's like, forget how it looks. And people who are uneducated from the stands can say it looks lazy, he's on a knee, looks, they don't care, blah, blah, blah. But that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is you have to put yourself in the best position to steal the strike and expand the perimeter of the zone. So, that's what it's about. So the one knee stuff, why not 2 knees? I think I've seen Yachty go to 2 knees before. It's done. I could pull a video. I know I have. He's just sitting there, just whatever on 2 knees and whack right from the bottom of the zone. It happens, right? So
why do you think Yachty chooses that? Why do you think Yachty choose for just that single pitch?
Well, Yachty can do whatever he wants.
He can do whatever he wants. And if Yachty started doing every pitch with his 2 knees down, watch what would happen.
Everything changed.
Mark this podcast, and everybody will start going to 2 knees down because they got him a little lower than the 1 knee now. So
because I actually had a kid
it's
in high
amazing
school
how these fads can start, and again, there's no reason why not for the 2 knees. I literally looked a 10-year-old in the face. I said, I couldn't give you a good reason other than the coach is going to tell you, and everybody's saying you look stupid. And it's unconventional. I couldn't give you a real reason because it's no different than 1 knee down.
Yeah, I had a kid in high school that I coached like 2-3 years ago. He would do that in between innings. He would just go down on 2 knees in between innings and catch all the warm-up pitches that way. And I asked him why. Yeah, I asked him why he did that, and he's just like, I don't know. I don't want to get into my stance, waste my energy. So I was like, okay. It's like
it's an interesting podcast question. I thought it's just very interesting how the catching community works and how these fads start.
Well, I mean,
we're 1 game away from Yachty doing it for a full game, so for the whole catching community to now start catching with 2 knees down.
Well, I mean, MLB obviously controls the culture, right? I mean, it's one of the only areas. Like minor league baseball doesn't control culture, college baseball doesn't control culture, Japanese baseball doesn't control culture. None of it controls culture. The thing that controls it is MLB. By far. And when you see someone like once Jose Bautista launched that bat in the playoffs, everyone started bat flipping. And it didn't matter that he got smacked by Odor. Was it Odor or was Odor. Yeah.
I think so. Something like that.
Yeah, but he got smacked. No one cares about that. They just cared about the bat flip. And obviously everyone started bat flipping. So going back to the catching thing, from a coach perspective on developing a catcher, obviously they I don't want to go from the ground up, but let's just say they have a new team, a group of catchers. What is the priorities? And the things that I have listed down are pop time, blocking, receiving, leadership, game management. Let's go from a perspective like this catcher knows what he's doing. What are the priorities when the coach gets him? for the first time? What am I focusing on? Is it I'm trying to control the running game? Is it I'm trying to control the rock, so blocking and receiving? Or am I trying to get my catcher to be the leader? Or am I trying to get my catcher to actually understand how to manage a game?
I think it goes more your first thing. If you got a new catcher, new team, put them together, they have to understand that they're an extension of the coaching staff from day one. So leadership is to me the biggest thing, and beyond that goes way above receiving, blocking, throwing, is just flat out handling the staff. So, well, the number one thing before we talk about receiving, blocking, throwing, plays to the plate, this, that, the other thing, is knowing your pitching staff, knowing what all of them have, what they like to throw in what situation, how to instill confidence in them, how to push their buttons, because they have to understand the value of a catcher when it comes to a team perspective, not individual stats, but a team perspective, is how well they handle the staff. You're not going to have a job if you don't handle the staff well. You just never, I don't care how good you hit, I don't care. But if you can't remember what a guy throws in what situation, you can't block, you can't instill confidence, guy, you don't want to take mound visits, the staff doesn't like you, you're never going to have a job. So to me, that's the number one thing with a new team. Then you could start once the catcher knows the pitching staff, has everything down, knows how to instill, has become very friendly with them on and off, like then we're talking receiving, blocking, throwing. Then to me it starts going to that stuff where it's like, okay, now the method I want to receive, this is the method I want to block, etc. So for a new team, I think it goes way above the catcher. I think it goes how the catcher can serve the staff, right? So to me, it's just the way it is. The catchers get the crap end of the stick. There's a no-hitter, and you could have called every pitch who's going to get interviewed. The pitcher, of course, right? So, it's just the way it is. You have to find ways to catchers find value in serving other, the pitching staff, in my opinion. That's where
so they got to gain the respect.
Team setting.
They got to gain the respect.
Yes.
How do you teach a kid to do that?
I think it goes off the field, as well. It goes beyond just for me, the best guys I had the most chemistry with were my best friends on the team, right? So if you can start to develop those types of relationships with all these different types of pitchers, it's gonna become very natural and easy for them to find these ways to instill confidence in these pitchers. So for me, there's certain guys where you go out and you mother F them and get in their face, and they may hate you for 2 innings, but they just struck out 6 straight, and then it's all good. Right. And then there's other guys where you got to pat them on the butt and tell them how good they are and, why they're the best. And then you get back there and then they do good. Right. So you got to figure out what makes these guys, tick. That's if I were teaching a guy, you got to get to know the individual. Then you got to get to know the individual in a game setting. And then you're going to become very easy to handle the staff.
You know what I find? The catchers that were really good on my team, they were guys that would be so interested in everyone else and not in themselves. They were just fascinated. Yeah, just fascinated with every single person on that team. But more importantly, the pitchers. Obviously, they're going to care more about the pitchers, because that's who they're taking care of. But they never talked about themselves. They never said this is me, pounding their chest and stuff like that. It seemed like they just took the humble pill and try to do anything and everything for that staff.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see a lot of former catchers become coaches.
Oh yeah,
or even pitching coaches.
Yeah, Mike Matheny. Yeah,
you just see that a lot more, just because one, they're that field general. They're the guy that leads the team. He's the guy that's kind of moving everybody around, communicating, like you said. So.
Well, you understand the person. Charles made a really good point. It's you got to know, does that person need a little pep talk? Does he need to know that, hey, I need to stroke the ego a little bit? Or does that guy need someone where you say to him oh, you're not that good, and then the guy gets a fire in his ass and he's like, all right, I'm going to show him.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your recommendation to a middle school and high school guy that is identifying, hey, I want to play college baseball? Let's not go the whole Power 5, D1, D2. That conversation gets really boring really fast. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be in general. Like, how do you say, I want to take this career to the next level. I want to play college baseball. I want to have a chance to play professional baseball. And if I get the chance, maybe knock on the door of major leagues. Like, what's your recommendation to that middle school and high school guy?
It's going to sound very simple, but you got to work hard, man. You got to work really, really hard. People don't get how hard this game is. They don't understand, how mentally and physically demanding this game is. And you can't go home and not, show up your game on Saturday and do nothing for 3 days, go to one practice, and maybe one lesson during the week, and go to your next doubleheader on Saturday and expect to perform. Like, it's a never-ending thing. It's a never-ending. You have to fall in love. My piece of advice is fall in love with the process of developing yourself as a baseball player, and then worry about that stuff, right? So, and you just have to understand that it takes a lot of hard work, and nothing is giving. The game is extremely grueling. It's going to take from me. It's going to take from you. It's going to take from you. But I can tell you one thing is, the harder you work, the luckier you're going to get. The more balls are going to drop in for you. The more that's 5 extra sounds corny, but those 10 extra reps in the gym made that ball go 4 inches out of reach for the left fielder. Like, and that was the gig hit that you'd hit in front of your college coach that, got you your scholarship. You don't know. It's a game of inches, and every little bit makes a difference. Like, it's a super competitive game. Guys are trained to do amazing things these days with technology and information that's out there. So you got to work really hard and be very proactive about your career.
Isn't it funny how that's everything? Like, entrepreneurial life, I guarantee you could probably make that segue pretty easily.
Oh yeah, no. I don't even want to go there. My home life, family life, personal, mental health, everything gets compromised whenever you're an entrepreneur, because your businesses come first, not your relationships, and that's very tough. But again, business gets to a point where things get easier. Building is the very, very tough part. But after a while, things get easier.
Yeah, I would say the only difference, like, from a segue from business to the baseball life, is that baseball life, as you get older and you get into the game more and you gather more skills, the competition actually gets harder because the supply of players is greater. If you get in a business and you niche yourself really well, you could end up being the dude automatically, which is that is probably the only difference between a baseball career and business life. But it goes back to your point. You've got to work so damn hard. Like, I only got to independent baseball, and that's as far as I went. But at the same time, like, that was hard in itself.
Yeah.
And imagining,
and think about
like,
how hard you worked.
Yes.
All the hours, sorry, I have baseball, I can't go. All the, it was a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like
the only friends you have are the baseball people that you're around.
Yeah. Well, college players have very, like, the sacrifices that you have to make at a very early age just to get to college. Like, again, I wouldn't substitute the experience, because, like, the skills you learn, like, you're literally in hyperdrive when you get into college baseball. Like, I find it interesting when I go to the gym. I see these guys that work extremely hard in the gym, but there's nothing on the other end of it. Like, they can't compete for anything. But for, like, baseball players, they're competing for something. So sometimes I feel like those guys are, like, filled with regret at times when they're working out. They're like, man, what happens if I just worked a little bit harder when I was in high school? I could have been that college guy. I could have been that pro guy. Like, I just play that game in my head because that's what I was thinking when I was in high school. I was like, dude, I don't want to have any regrets.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. You definitely can't have any regrets. That to me is when I see, I obviously coach a lot of youth baseball, and the parents that are living vicariously through their kids and care more than them, or pushing them more than them, carrying their bag, yelling, screaming at them, they don't do good. And next thing you know, they don't want to play no more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you see that, and that's, definitely what you don't want. But these kids need to understand, like, you need to put yourself in a position where you're going to a Yankee game or whatever, and you're 45 years old with your, 10-year-old kid or whatever. And are you going to say, what are you going to be saying? Are you going to be saying, I ain't gonna, I would have made it if it wasn't for this, or are you going to be like, I gave it all I could. I did everything I possibly could. Like, I made it here. And these guys, they're a different breed, so, like, you just have to have no regrets thinking back, and
you appreciate it more. Like when I go to a major league game and I see those guys out in the field, I appreciate the skill level that they have. It's like I don't like.
Well, it's mind-boggling how much strength and how much. Well, look at how hard guys are throwing now.
Yeah, it was funny. My wife, I had just had a conversation with her when I was leaving the house, and she was like saying, "Oh, we got a new employee. He played." He actually made it to an NFL team, but he wasn't that good. Like he got cut right away, and I was like thinking to myself, like, no, that guy was probably really good.
He was probably the best team on his college team.
Yeah, he literally like to get your foot onto that field, onto the practice field, even though you don't make it to an NFL game. Like that is unbelievable. You are the top of top athletes in the world.
He could have had a whole bunch of records going on at that college or anywhere else he played, and then it's just those guys, like the people that are at the professional level are just a different breed.
Yeah,
they really are.
You definitely can't say when people say, "Oh, that guy sucks." He does not suck.
Yeah, the guys that bat under 200 in the major leagues are still a lot better than the average person.
Well, even like the bench players.
Yeah,
I mean, even the guy that makes it to the show and then ends up getting a 12 spot on him and then is sent right back down. Like that guy's pretty good. Just like, I mean, that just shows you how good the MLB hitters are.
Yeah, no, it's insane. And you know what? It's now to a point where hitting's been hitting for centuries and it's never going to change. But the pitching, they now have ways of making these arms do things that are absolutely insane. Like just velocity wise, like the average velocity, go back to Babe Ruth's day, obviously, compared to now, it's not even close, and it's steadily climbing, right? So now all this information, tremendous information that these come like Driveline or whatever, the amazing information they're dishing out and these training programs and these weighted ball programs, and it is just the arms are beating the bats, and that's why it's turned to a game where the games are won and lost with home runs because you can't compete. There's no more get them on, get them over, get them in. It's just different. You can't compete late in the count with pitching like this. You just can't. It's insane, right? So like get that out, guys on, and hit the ball over the fence.
Yeah, I would say MLB's like you're dead on. Like you're absolutely dead on. And the tunneling aspect of pitching has been a huge concept that has helped pitchers. Like if you're just looking at how Vanderbilt, they're just rolling out dudes, and they have a guy from St. Louis who's 17 years old, Christian Little, and he is now a midweek guy for Vanderbilt. That is insane.
That's crazy.
Because I think it's just because of how they're able to teach their pitchers, and they get good talent, and then they're able to expand on that talent when they get them into their system. It's just very impressive. Very impressive.
And I think back to your point, Charles, like those pitchers are getting so much better, and that's going to put so much more pressure on those catchers to try and catch those balls, block those balls.
Yeah.
So,
and he's like, C25, let's go.
105-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yes.
Like there's it's amazing what the game has changed in about 3 years.
I know. Well, and here's another good segue. Game management. At what point do you teach a catcher how to actually manage a game?
I think you guide them along the way, but managing a game is instincts, and it's experience. Like I said, you're an extension of the coaching staff, so you have to find a way to control the tempo of the game. Like it's the only position where everybody is looking at you, and they, catchers need to understand that. So everybody's feeding off your body language, your energy, your direction, your command, everything. So you're the quarterback. So managing the game, they got to understand, like I said, it's the only position everybody's looking at you. So you better be in a position to be a vocal leader and a leader by action as well.
Do you have your catchers call the game?
I'm a big believer in that. Yeah, I really do not like when I see, listen, it's a big scenario, and you want to throw in a sign or whatever, and you really want a fastball in that situation. Whatever the case is, I get it. But the kids are not going to learn, if somebody's sitting there calling every pitch for him. Like, I just bought a house. I have to do my drywall, right? So if I'm doing if I pay the drywall guy to come do the drywall, I don't know how to do the drywall now. So now when I buy another house and I have to do drywall, I don't know how to do drywall. But if I learn how to do the drywall this time, maybe I mess up a little bit. And the next house, when I go do my drywall, I know what I'm doing. And I know how to drive. So it's the same thing with calling a game. It's nothing but experience. If somebody is calling the game for you, you're never going to learn, you know? So, and as much as people say, oh, I'll call for him and he'll kind of see how I call the game. Yeah, I get it. But at the end of the day, that catcher in game is worrying about a lot of other things. He's looking in, throwing down a finger that you called, and that's it. He's not going to really recollect your mindset unless you really take him aside after every single inning and say, you know, break down every pitch and say, this is why we did this, and kind of be constantly in his ear about it. But for me, pitch calling, I wrote a pitch calling philosophy. I think it's a tremendous amount of instinct and experience. Same thing in managing a game. You know, it's a complete result oriented type of thing. Pitch calling, like you could call a perfect pitch, perfectly executed in that perfect situation, the ball goes over the fence, you know, and you could do the same thing. Perfectly pitched, perfectly executed, and then it gets pop-ups. It's completely result-oriented, right? So uneducated coaches are going to go, well, you know, what the hell? The ball went over the fence. Why'd you call that? You know, but if the ball was just a pop-up on that pitch, it would have been fine. Meanwhile, it could have been the dumbest call ever. But again, we're result-oriented, which is wrong. Nobody's a Monday morning quarterback here. Nobody's got a crystal ball. So coaches are very incorrect in a lot of that. And I don't like that when I see that happen, because it makes the catcher feel stupid and like he did something wrong. Meanwhile, it's a learning curve. And a lot of times it's not always the pitch you called, it's how it was executed. So there's all these different things. And there's like I said, there's outliers. Perfect pitch, perfect scenario, perfect execution, ball goes over the fence. Terrible pitch call that makes no sense. And it gets popped up, right? So, you know,
I always like asking the questions too. Like I like asking questions to the catcher, like because I'm in the same boat as you. I always had all my catchers call the game, and then when a pitch, and obviously I'm totally focused in on what the pitch call was, and I can see it. And then if it's the wrong call or if it's the right call, I always ask that question at the end, like, hey, third batter, second pitch.
right.
Why did you choose
throw that there?
Not even that, because he's going to think, oh, I did something wrong. I would go, well, why did you want to go with that pitch in that scenario? Not right or wrong. I just want to know why you went with that scenario. So then it gets him thinking in a direction of like, oh, coach isn't pissed off at me. I didn't do something wrong. He's actually asking for my opinion, thinking that I'm an expert now. I can give him an expert thought. And now
stimulating his brain to think, okay,
exactly.
Why did I call that pitch?
Yep. It's always the phrasing. It's the phrasing of the question. It's how it's actually coming out. I'm just a huge believer in that, because like, you know how it is when you're playing and you have that coach that's like a legend. Like I was with Coach Gutton, and he had a question like that. I'd be like, oh shit, I did something wrong. Like, what did I do wrong? Like, coach, don't be mad at me. I'm good. I'm
sorry.
But like the guy, and nothing against Coach Gutton, because I respect the guy so much. He was a really, really good coach. But the coach that I always vibed with was the guy that would always ask questions in a very curious way, because then it got me thinking, and it seemed like he was developing my leadership skills. And he was developing all the leadership skills of all the guys on the team, because he wanted a whole bunch of leaders rather than a whole bunch of followers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, and it's, I mean, like I said, it's sad when I see it. I see it happen. It's happened to me. It happened to me at the professional level. I remember we were playing one night, and kid had a very good changeup, but a 2-0 count. It got me in a big situation, big hitter. It's probably a 3 situation. I know for a fact 3 situations that game. I went 2-0 changeup and got the guy to roll out. There was 3 other situations. We get to the 9th inning. Game's on the line, 2-0 changeup, I call it. The guy, whatever, wraps it in the gap. And it was a different guy, not anybody that's seen that changeup before, whatever the case is. And my coach, why are you going to that? And I'm like, were you not watching the previous 9 innings? Like, you got the three different times on 2-0 changeups, got them jumping out of their shoes. Like, and then the one time it doesn't work, they could have scored 9 runs earlier, but the guy did a good job and got a hit right now. What do you want from me? You know, like it's just not right coaching, and a lot of people were not catchers, so they don't understand it. They don't get it, you know, and it's like I said, it's completely result oriented, which is wrong. You can't think that way when you teach it. Like exactly like you said, it needs to be an interactive, stimulating experience, not wrong call.
Yeah, I always liked it. My coach would always say, sometimes you just got to tip your cap.
Oh,
I mean, the guy executed. Like, he was just better than you on that pitch.
Yeah.
That's it. It doesn't mean that he's better than you. It just means on that specific pitch, he was better than you. So just tip your cap, take the strikeout, walk back to the dugout, and then give him back the next at bat.
Hey, Charles, so I have a lot of catchers, and how I always tell them to kind of learn if they're asking me, oh, what do I got to do? How do I learn to do these pitch calling in these certain scenarios? I kind of tell them to watch the game. Watch, because not many kids don't do that anymore, I don't think. They don't watch baseball. So, like, I remember when I was younger, how I was learning was I would watch the game and then go off of the scenarios that were going in the game and try to put down in my suggestion in my head, oh, I would put this pitch down for this scenario and see if I was in the right track of thinking of whatever that catcher was doing. So what I do is that with a lot of my catchers, just to be like, the only way you really can do it is if you keep playing. But an easy way to do it is go and watch. Yeah. Watch the game. Yeah. Have a conversation with your dad or coach.
Yeah, consume it.
And I think that always worked out a lot for me. Yep. I didn't know if you would see that a lot with your guys, if you have a lot of guys do the same thing.
Yeah, so guys, like, you can turn on any TV, and if you're a shortstop, sorry, can't see the defense until the ball's hit to him. But you can see every pitch, every game, and you can see the catcher every pitch, and you should be sitting there watching when he's throwing down, watching how he's throwing his signs and how he's setting up his knees towards the shortstop a little bit shaded. Like, there's always little tips that you could pick up just from, watching a Major League Baseball game that you're 100% right. They don't do enough. I got to be honest, I don't do it enough. I try and make more time to watch and study guys, but it is definitely something that kids should be doing more, because a catcher should be doing more in specifics, because, again, it's TV and you can see him every single pitch, anything with a pitcher. But also, this has nothing to do with catching, but this is just another good conversation thing, is I think you should also be trying to pick sequences when there's guys on second. So if a catcher's throwing down multiple signs, I think for just a good practice, because every catcher is a base runner, or every player is a base runner unless you're a pitcher, is when you throw on a game, try and pick the sequence. So I remember I was on my girlfriend's couch or something with her dad, and we're just watching the Yankee game, and he was going through sequences, throwing down a million signs. Took me about like 3-4 pitches, but I realized it was outs +1. They were going off outs +1. So it was like 2 outs, 1 out. They're going on second sign. 2 outs. They're going on third sign. And I picked this up in a couple pitches. And then all of a sudden he would throw down, do a sequence and say slider. And then my girlfriend's dad, he would go, guy would throw a slider. He's like, oh my God, how did you know that?
You're the smartest person alive.
Smartest guy can tell the future. But it's like these are good practices that you can do when watching baseball, right? So when you get on second base and you only got 3-4 pitches on the bag before somebody hits it, whatever the case is, try and get in the first few pitches. So now he throws a curveball, you're on second base, try and take third base, and you pick the sign. So
I think that's also huge for guys on the bench.
Yeah.
We used to have a guy in college. He was really good at picking up if a pitcher was tipping his pitches, and it was actually another pitcher, and he would notice that same thing a lot of times just from watching the pitcher, and he would just let us all the hitters know, be like, hey, he's doing this. He's going to throw a fastball here. He's going to throw an off-speed pitch here. And I think that's even huge also. Not just watching like a game on TV. Watch the game even if you're not playing. Help your team out any way you can.
Bench guys need to be doing that. Have to.
Yeah. I always find that fascinating too, where the pitcher doesn't know that he's doing that, like has no clue. Like it's just in his mannerisms. Catcher has no clue that he's showing his signs towards the first base line, and like you can pick it up as a first baseman, and like it's so fascinating, like human nature, where you think like, man, I'm pretty good, like I'm calling all these pitches, and all of a sudden like everyone just starts just hitting your pitcher, and you're like, what's happening, man? This guy sucks. But in reality, it's actually the catcher that's giving away the signs, or the pitcher's he could have just dominant stuff. But when you know it's happening,
his glove one way, flips his glove another way.
When a hitter knows it's happening, I don't care if it's 100 miles an hour, I don't care if it's 80 miles an hour, or you're changing up speeds. If the hitter knows what's happening, it's game over. There's no way that you're winning that battle. No way.
Professional hitters are not going to miss either. When they know something's coming, it's.
No, even when you talk about like, I was fascinated with like professional hitting when I had my rookie season. I had 3 former MLB guys, and they were talking about the concept of baiting a pitcher to throw a certain pitch at a certain count. And I was like, I have never thought about that. Holy cow, that is super smart. He's like, yeah, I baited that guy to throw me that curveball, and I knew it was going to be up in the zone, and I crushed it.
Yeah, I think Cabrera used to do that all the time too.
for me, like that's reverse psychology. That's working. You're playing chess, not checkers. So like as a catcher, you got to try and think. For me, what is this guy looking for, and why would I throw that? So like for me, reverse pitching, like yes, establish the fastball. But for me, I mean, I don't know. I coach a lot of youth baseball and seen a lot of college baseball. When that guy comes out first inning and starts deucing guys up, first time through, whap, 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 throwing curveballs, and then second time through, he's going slot, and then fastballs or slot. For me, that's kryptonite. Because now, like for me, I was an aggressive hitter. I look for the ball out in front, middle lineup guy, looking to do damage. So when I couldn't, say, okay, I know 2 out of 3 of these are going to be fastballs at least. Out of the first 3, that's the tough way to hit. You gotta. It's a guessing game a little bit at that point. But reverse psychology is a tremendous asset for a hitter or a catcher.
So would you say this is a fair analogy that youth and high school baseball is like playing checkers, college is like playing chess, and then professional baseball is like chess on 3 different boards?
Yeah, honestly, I'll be. College is chess, no doubt. Like they have every game, you have a full scouting report of every hitter, every tendency, everything, and vice versa on you on the other dugout. Lower level, professional doesn't really work like that. Rookie ball, low A, short seasons, you don't really get scouting reports like that because there's too much movement. Guys, AA, AAA, I don't know, I've never been there, but I can imagine the scouting reports are getting a little thing. But the big league level, forget it. That's a whole different kind of chess. I mean, it is unlike anything I've ever seen. Like I would be in hitters meetings and they'd be breaking down just numbers like I've never seen as far as just like heat maps, tendencies, where they throw, when they throw, what hitters expect where, where this guy, the last 5 split, where his last 5 hits. Like you're analyzing so many numbers before a game. It's insane at that level. Like I got to see and step into spring training and be with big league guys, and it's an incredible amount of work that these guys, mental work that they put in before every single game that people don't realize. Like it really is. Your
product was awarded ABCA Product of the Year. Is that correct?
It got Best of Show. Yes, awarded by Collegiate Baseball. Yes, Best of Show.
That is crazy that you were able to do that in a matter of 1 year, right? Has it been just 1 year?
Like 6, but then it happened. I think it was like 6 months.
And I've been on the ABCA floor. Obviously, like this was more virtual, right? This was the virtual.
Yeah, this was.
But again, like there are so many different products that are presented on the floor. I'm amazed that you were able to do that in just a short time frame. Like, explain like the concept of why it's so important for a catcher to have weighted balls. I know we explained it in the beginning of the podcast, but like I want you to like really deep dive into it, like why you think this is such a game-changing product that ABCA said, yeah, we're going to give him the Best in Show for this year.
Well, I got to be honest. I got Best to Show, or C25 got Best to Show for the product, yes, but it really was the philosophy as well, right? Because weighted balls existed, right? All I did was make it full grain leather and make sure every ball had nice low seams. I didn't do anything that crazy. It was just that novel kind of thing, like, why has nobody put weighted baseballs, through a pitching machine before? It was just kind of that big, like, when I was talking to the guy at Collegiate Baseball on the phone, he was interviewing me. He couldn't believe what was coming out of my mouth, because he's like, this doesn't exist. He's like, pitching machines have been around for decades, since 70s. Like, why has nobody done this? How has nobody thought of this? And I said, honestly, I don't know. Like, that's really what won the Best to Show, right? They have amazing, all these different things. But the philosophy and the fact that I guess nobody had just thought of this was yes, that was to me what really kind of took it. It's a great product, amazing product. The balls are tremendous. They work perfect. They're durable. Everything is great as far as the product, but the philosophy, I feel, is really what did it. Like I said, pitching machines have been around since the 70s, 60s, whenever they came out. I don't even know. Those big blue jugs machines, I know those were probably like the first ones.
Oh, yeah.
I still got some of those, and they're running strong. They made those things good. But, nobody pushed the envelope since then. Nobody had pushed the envelope, and this now with the 3 ounce, 4 ounce, 6, 7, and 8 ounce machine training balls, it took training to a whole new level. And it took, like, at the highest levels, you've used machine training all over the world at the highest levels since machines have came out. That's how you've trained high level catchers. It's been stagnant since then. Like, it's been the same drills. It's been the same 5 ounce ball. It's been the same everything for decades and decades and decades. So that's really what I feel like won this award was. It's just like that big light bulb. It's like, how did nobody think to do this?
It's so simple.
It's just so simple.
That's what makes it. That's why I think it's very attractive, is that anyone can understand why you would do it. Like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Like, why would I not do it?
Yeah, I mean, it's taking. You got, like anything else. If you go to the gym, you need to overload train. And underload training in this case has a ton of benefits, like we said about before. But it really challenged people in ways that or players that they've never been challenged before. And I knew that this was going to have an immediate impact on the highest level. So when you think, right, of an entrepreneur and your market is kind of like a triangle. As far as the baseball world, you got the pro, college level up that top part of the triangle. High school, middle school baseball. Then you got little league down here. This is the masses. This product hits that top part of the triangle, right? Like a little league is not going to invest in this because they have to get a $2,300 machine before. Then they got, right, it's a process. The underload balls would be tremendous for a little league team, but it's just, you need, to get the full effect, you really want to use it through a pitching machine. So typically whoever has these pitching machines previously are the ones purchasing. Who has pitching machines laying around? Facilities, colleges, professional teams. So that's where it's had the most immediate, impact as far as, purchasing and orders coming through. But yeah, it's been pretty good in that sense.
Cool. Well, Charles, it has been an unbelievable interview. I mean, conversations. I learned actually a lot from catching. I had no idea about catching. Like, literally, I told you, like, they wanted me to catch my first catching experience. No joke. First catching experience. It was my rookie season. They wanted me to go catch a guy that was our closer who threw 94 with a nasty slider. Charles, you could probably catch that guy really easily, and Trent, you probably could. But like, and the lights in the bullpen, there were, how those minor league ballparks are. There's no lights in the bullpen. Like, they just decided, hey, we're gonna put all the lights onto the field and just screw the catcher. And so, like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't have a cup on. This guy's gonna throw. I hope he doesn't expect me to block. Like, and I'm gonna have to go chase this thing. It was a miserable experience. But anyways,
that's fun. Yeah, no, it's a lot of people's experience with catching. A lot of times they just leave the position when blocking comes into play. That's what I've caught on to. When they got to realize, I got to get down and block. Yeah, that's when a lot of people are leaving.
So, Charles, thanks again. How can they follow you? How can they reach out to you? How can they get the product? Go ahead and plug it away.
Yeah, so C25trainingproducts.com. On there, you'll find all the information as far as any packages we have available. You guys can submit, custom package requests. So let's say you really liked, a 3 ounce and a 7 ounce. You felt those are, the balls you really like the most, and you want to be cost effective and you want to create a custom package. You could do that on there as well. There's pre-made packages. The philosophy is up there. There's importance of machine training, importance of the underload, and importance of the overload, a full written out philosophy on the website. There is a drill video tab on there as well, where you find receiving, blocking, throwing drills, all different things you can do with the baseball. So really, C25trainingproducts.com. You find all the information you need. You could also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We have all three, and yeah, those are our 3 social media platforms right now. So if you guys have any questions, anybody listening, feel free to reach out, DM me on any of them, or through a contact on the website, and be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks again, guys, for listening to this episode of the Tiger Interview Series. Make sure that you like this video if you watched it. Make sure you subscribe to on Apple Podcast, follow on Spotify. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you in the next episode.